listening to A Scary State, and this week we're talking about Hawaii. So, Lauren.
Yes, Kenzie.
Let's get scary.
I knew you were going to do that.
Well, yeah. You know me so well.
So at the top of this episode, we're going to say we are not going to pronounce things correctly.
We have all the pronunciations pulled up on YouTube and Google and all that, and we will do our best, but we will sound like two very white women trying to read these Hawaiian words.
Yes. So we apologize, but we're really trying.
You need to go lay down. It's not time to play. Go lay down. I have a funny story.
Yes.
This is how I know people don't read my posts.
Okay.
So, because no one reads them, I can share that on the State Spotlight post that I do every week, when I do the famous people from there, I like to do a little, funny thing. Or what I find funny.
Them.
No, you don't, because if you did, you totally would have called me out on this.
I didn't read the most recent one because I haven't been on social media a lot because I've been sleepy.
Anyway, so for Kentucky, I put Muhammad Ali. And for what he's known for, I said being able to beat the shit out of you. But I wanted to do the little asterisks instead of spelling out the whole thing. And so I did SH asterisk IT. And I saw it and I was like, well, that I guess defeats the purpose. And I was like, well, I'm not going to say anything because I know no one fucking reads this.
And people might think that you purposely split the word up.
Yeah. No, I tried to make it so that the I was the asterisk, and because I never do that. So it's just SH asterisk IT.
We appreciate an effort.
Yeah. So, yeah. And we also want to say that our hearts go out to those in California and all immigrants of this country. We love you here at A Scary State, and you are always welcome. And down with the tyrant that currently runs our country.
No king.
No king. So if you're going out to do protests on Saturday, because I know those are happening a lot around.
Well, this will come out after.
If you went to a lot of protests on Saturday, the 14th, then hopefully
you were safe.
You were safe and you were okay. And thank you for standing up for
doing what we have to do.
Yeah, people's rights, whether they're your own rights or the rights of others. And so, yeah, we appreciate that.
Yeah.
So, would you like to tell us about the dark side of Hawaii?
Yes, I would love to. On the morning of January 17th, 1892, Queen Liliuokalani of Hawaii looked out for her kingdom and saw U.S. Marines occupying the palace grounds. Armed men, some of them American citizens and businessmen, had orchestrated a coup, one that would forever change the fate of the islands. This wasn't a spontaneous uprising. It was carefully planned by a group of wealthy sugar plantation owners and foreign residents known as the Committee of Safety. They were frustrated by Queen Liliuokalani's push to restore power to Native Hawaiians and roll back a constitution. Imposed at gunpoint a few years earlier.
Pause.
No, right.
No, you said that right.
Oh, okay.
I'm pausing you because she was held at gunpoint to sign this constitution.
Okay.
And she was trying to roll it back because she didn't.
Because it was stripping her people of political control.
Correct.
Yep. Okay.
So I just wanted to make sure it was clear. She didn't have someone at gunpoint. She was held at gunpoint and forced to sign this.
There we go.
Yeah.
With the backing of the U.S. Minister John Stevens and military support from the USS Boston, the committee declared the monarchy overthrown and installed a provisional government. Queen Liliuokalani, refusing to risk bloodshed among her people, surrendered under protest. She believed the U.S. government would eventually do the right thing. But she was wrong. Despite a formal investigation that concluded the overthrow had been illegal and unjust, political pressure from annexation supporters in Washington led President McKinley to push forward. McKinley to push forward. In 1898, Hawaii was officially annexed by the United States through a joint resolution, not by treaty and without the consent of the Hawaiian people. The Queen would never return to her throne. To this day, many Native Hawaiians view the overthrow as an act of theft, an illegal seizure of land, culture, and sovereignty. And they're right. What happened in 1893 wasn't just the fall of a monarchy, it was the silencing of a nation that never truly stopped resisting.
When you look up dark history in Hawaii, that's pretty much all that pops up.
Oh.
It's really sad.
Yeah. Imagine being ripped from your home, your family, and your entire life because of a disease you couldn't control. That was the reality for thousands of Hawaiians in the 19th and 20th century who were exiled to Kalapapa on the island of Molokai. After Western contact, Hawaii was devastated by foreign diseases, and by the 1830s, leprosy, now called Hansen's disease, began to spread. I didn't know it had a different name.
Neither did I.
Is it still a thing?
Leprosy?
Yeah.
It's probably more treatable,
Hmm.
but for the most part, most diseases are still around. Is it as prominent as it once was? No.
Yeah. With fear and stigma rising, the Hawaiian government, heavily influenced by Western medical advisors, created a law in 1865 that forced people with leprosy into permanent quarantine. Kalapapa was remote, surrounded by ocean towering cliffs, and nearly impossible to escape. Men, women, and even children were shipped there, often with no warning and no chance to say goodbye. The conditions were harsh, and the medical care was minimal at best. It wasn't until years later that people like Father Damien and Mother Marian Koo brought compassion and advocacy to the settlement. Still, the trauma lingers today. Many Native Hawaiian families carry the pain of ancestors who disappeared into Kalapapa and never came back. While the mainland remembers places like Manzanar and Tule Lake, Hawaii's Honolulu internment camp was kept out of the spotlight for decades. After the attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941, martial law was declared in Hawaii and fear gripped the islands. The U.S. military swiftly began arresting Japanese Americans, Okinawans, Koreans, and even some Germans and Italians, many of them citizens, teachers, priests, and community leaders. Honolulu, tucked away in a gulch on Oahu, became the largest internment camp in Hawaii. It was hot, humid, and infested with mosquitoes. Guards watched over barbed wire fences as internees tried to survive, uncertain of their fate. Many were held without trial, simply labeled as enemy aliens.
It's crazy how history repeats itself.
Yup. The worst part? Most people in Hawaii didn't even know the camp existed. It wasn't until the early 2000s that historians began uncovering its location and stories, revealing yet another layer of injustice from a war that reshaped the islands forever.
When I was reading about this, I also didn't know about this camp, in Hawaii.
Right.
But I was thinking about it. I was like, well, I guess it makes sense because it happened at Pearl Harbor.
Right.
But you only really hear about the internment camps on the mainland.
Mm-hmm.
And so, when I read about it, I was like, it makes sense. But what was weird to me was that no one knew about it.
Yeah.
When I was like, wouldn't the first place you think of be the place that it happened?
I mean, you would think, but if someone doesn't talk about something enough, then it's not the first thing that pops into your mind, you know?
That's true. That's true. That's a good point.
In 1931, a case erupted in Honolulu that exposed deep racial divides and set off a national scandal. It all started when Thalia Macy, a white woman and wife of a U.S. Navy officer, claimed she had been kidnapped and assaulted by a group of local men, most of them Native Hawaiian or Asian. The trial quickly turned into a media circus. The local men were arrested and put on trial, but the jury couldn't reach a verdict. That's when Thalia's mother, Grace Fortescue. I covered this, so I know it.
And she sucks, so we don't care about saying her name right.
Right. Grace Fortescue and Thalia's husband decided to take matters into their own hands. They kidnapped one of the accused, Joseph Kahahawai, beat him and murdered him in cold blood. Even though they confessed to the crime, they weren't truly punished. A sympathetic judge sentenced them to just 1 hour in the governor's office instead of prison. 1 hour. The Macy affair remains one of the most racially charged and shameful episodes in Hawaii's legal history, a grim reminder of how colonialism and systematic racism shaped the islands long after the monarchy fell. You can hear more about this story in episode 149. When you think of Hawaii, sugar might not be the first thing that comes to mind, but for over a century, it was the lifeblood of the islands. From the mid-1800s through the early 1900s, massive sugar plantations dominated Hawaii's economy, reshaping the land, the culture, and the people who lived there. But behind the sweet profits was a much darker reality. Sugar plantation owners, known as the Big Five, were powerful, wealthy corporations that controlled not just the crops, but also politics, labor, and land.
It was an oligarchy.
They needed cheap labor, and they found it in waves of immigrants from China, Japan, Portugal, Korea, and the Philippines. These workers were promised opportunities, but instead they were met with brutal working conditions, tiny wages, and long backbreaking days under the sun. Plantation managers purposely separated ethnic groups and discouraged unity, fearing strikes and rebellion. Workers were often housed in overcrowded camps, subjected to racial hierarchies, and punished for speaking their native language. Many of them were indentured or bound by contract, with little recourse against abuse. Native Hawaiians were also displaced during this time, pushed off their ancestral land, their culture devalued, and their language suppressed, all in the name of sugar profits. The lush landscapes of Hawaii were carved into monoculture fields, and water was diverted from traditional agricultural systems to feed the plantations. Though the last sugar mill shut down in 2016, wow, that's recent.
Correct.
The legacy of this era still lingers in the land, in labor laws, and in the generational trauma left behind by the exploitative system.
Yeah.
Did you cover this, or you covered something similar to this, didn't you?
I covered the it wasn't really the actual plantations, but there's like a outdoor museum, so to speak, where it has like different types of houses of the different like cultures of people, like immigrants that would have been working on the plantations.
Mhm.
And there's different types of houses of like what they would have lived in.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But it's not, I mean, it might be an actual sugar plantation or former sugar plantation, but it's a bunch of different ones. Like it's like a Japanese house, a Korean house, like things like that. So it wasn't technically where they would have lived, but it's like a representation of it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And so how we got Hawaii was pretty much we just went there and wanted to take it?
Yeah, so we took it over, as you read about, and then up until 1959, it was just like a territory like Guam and Puerto Rico.
Right.
And then they put a vote, and most of the people did vote to like become part of the United States.
Why?
Um,
Is it because being a territory, you really don't have any rights and stuff?
maybe.
Because, like, in Puerto Rico, like, they can't vote for president, but the
Right.
president still controls them. They don't I don't know. It's just it seems like kind of the short end of the stick.
Yeah, I'm not really 100%. It like didn't say like why they decided like yes for this one, but I'm thinking you're probably right.
Yeah.
And so that's when it became a state. It was the last state.
Well,
It became a state the year my dad was born.
wow. Was it before he was born or after?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know the actual month.
Because what's kind of fun would be like, was he born under the current flag we have now?
Mm,
Or was he born under the flag with 49 stars?
I don't know.
Didn't Alaska come that same year?
Yeah, but it came first.
Yeah.
It was 49.
Well, yeah, if this is the last state, that would make sense.
Yeah,
Chronologically.
chronologically speaking. But yeah. So like people like voted for it, and I'm thinking like maybe you're right, like maybe just because it provided them more rights and things like that.
Mhm.
But the majority of like native want Hawaii to be its own sovereign country at this point.
Yeah,
Even like today. Yeah, they hate people coming to visit and
that's what I
stuff.
heard.
Which I completely understand because your land has been taken and it feels like it's been turned into this.
Mhm.
But every state needs tourism.
Right.
So
Joe and I just started watching White Lotus.
I saw on
And-
my HBO.
Oh. So we finished season 1,
I saw.
and it takes place in Hawaii.
Oh, okay.
It's so good.
I mean, I love Hawaii 5-0.
So we're going to start season 2 at some point. We've been very, very busy this past week.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're very excited.
I can always tell when you guys have watched something because your shows are before mine.
Was it like that for Secret Life of Mormon Wives too?
No, because you have your own.
Oh, yeah.
Profile.
I do on that one.
Yeah.
Because we had been hearing about it for so long. So we're like, oh, let's give it a shot. And it lived up to the hype. Because it's a show that like leaves you with this sense of just like anxiety. So the whole
Stop. You should never be allowed to explain shows or movies to anyone because you're terrible at it and make it so I don't want to watch
But it's not
it.
scary anxiety. It's like, oh my God, what's going to happen next? Anxiety, like nothing's going to jump out at you. Nothing's going to scare you.
Anxiety in general. This is why I don't watch new shows. It gets to be too overwhelming. But no, I have heard good things about White Lotus. But isn't it different every season?
So I think it's like American Horror Story,
Yeah.
where each season is different. It's
Yeah.
like independent from the others, but it might
Yeah.
be the same actors. This one at least has, I think it's the same premise,
Yeah.
but it's different.
Different people.
Like different things.
Yeah.
So it's like a dark comedy drama,
Mhm.
sharp social satire, but I can't remember where Joe found it, but the show described it perfectly like anxiety mixed with dark humor. And I was
Yeah.
like, that's exactly the show.
Yeah.
Because you don't know what's going to happen.
I've heard good things.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about starting it.
You should. It won't scare you, I promise.
I'm not worried about it scaring me.
Okay.
I know it won't scare me.
It won't.
But I sometimes don't make it through shows because my anxiety gets to be too much.
There is a scene though where it's
Don't
gonna
tell me.
No, I just want to tell you, it's gonna start and you go, oh my God. Both
think-
Joe and I like screamed when it happened. And when it happens, you'll know exactly what scene I'm talking
Yeah.
about.
But yeah, like there's a lot of usually when they're like more than one season,
Mm-hmm.
if they're like anything more than like 5 to 7, usually after 7 I have to take a break.
Well, this show's only 6 episodes. So
Yeah.
you watch Criminal Minds.
Yeah, I had to stop that too when I first watched it. Now I've seen it so many times that I know what happens, so
So you're not stressed.
I'm not stressed. Yeah, there's a couple of them the first time around. I skipped the episodes because I knew what happened. I was like, I can't deal with that.
Joe makes me skip episodes of The Office because it gives him too bad of secondhand anxiety
I understand.
and embarrassment that he can't watch it.
I understand.
I force him sometimes when I'm trying to be mean.
Yeah.
Well, Hawaii.
What's spooky to you, Puan, Luan?
So today I'm going to cover some monsters, shape-shifting spirits, demigods, and guardians that reside in Hawaii.
Okay.
There are a lot of names in this. I'm going to try my best. Okay, here we go. The Ma'o are known as shape-shifting water dragons, but not the fire-breathing dragons that people typically think of when they hear the term dragon.
You can't. He lives in water. Put it right out.
Okay, we had this question at work for some reason. Would you rather have the dragon ability to fly or the dragon ability to blow fire?
Fly.
That's what I
like
picked.
It's more useful.
Yeah, that's what I picked too.
Burning people. Why can't you do both?
I don't know. In our specific scenario, you can only pick one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you imagine a dragon walking around, but it can breathe fire? That's weird.
That would be weird.
Yeah.
So the Ma'o are the protectors of Hawaii's freshwater sources, and they take their job very seriously and are very territorial. Most Ma'o are said to be female, having the shape-shifting ability to appear as a beautiful maiden or a water dragon, appearing as 12 to 30-foot-long reptiles black as night. They tend to dwell in caves, pools, and fish ponds. They are also known to possess profound powers. They can control and manipulate the weather. They have been able to summon giant waves to sweep trespassers from trails or even drown victims. The Ma'o can also take on human form, usually appearing as an alluring woman to unsuspecting men. It may happen as you are hiking in the woods, approaching a beautiful cascading waterfall. As you approach the pool, you spot what appears to be a beautiful woman bathing in the waters. Enchanted, you move closer. Then suddenly, the woman's form begins to shimmer and shift, turning into a massive lizard-like creature with glistening scales and razor-sharp teeth. But how did they come to be? This particular story deals with the Ma'o of Kalina Stream. This pond was once said to have been a beautiful girl who lived in the valley. She wanted to marry the shark man, Kamo'olalei. And I'm just going to call him Kamo from here on. And I'm going to get more into him later, but so she wants to marry him. But her parents...
Shark boy.
Yeah. But she's not Lava Girl. No, that's Pele. But her parents didn't want this, so they turned their daughter into a Ma'o, hoping that this would put an end to any romance. In heavy rains, she would come down the street to meet Kamo. She would go to the sea, to the big rock next to the end of the beach. The rock was called Pohaku Kula Alai. On this rock, she would turn herself into a beautiful princess and call it a Kamo. He would come out of the cave, turn into a man, and he and the woman would make love. When they were ready...
What was he before? Oh, a shark. Duh.
Yeah. When they were ready, they would go to live in the stream. You don't want to be in the water while they are in the stream.
Yeah, a shark and a dragon? Absolutely not.
The Ma'o relate to our other story of Pele, as they are part of the famous legends of the battle. One story goes that Haiaka, Pele's sister, went on a mission...
I know this one.
Do you?
Yeah, when we were teaching kids about like legends and how cultures and things like that use legends, that this story that you're about to tell is one that we use as an example.
Okay, so Pele's sister goes on a mission to rescue Lahai Ayu. Do you want to take over the story if you know all the pronunciations?
Oh, I don't know the pronunciations. I just know what's going to happen.
So that was Pele's mortal lover.
Yes.
Lohia Yu had been rescued from the clutches of some nasty Ma'o. As Haiaki, Pele's sister, was making her way across the island, she encountered many dangerous Ma'o, each one more dangerous and cunning than the last.
She also only had 40 days to get there and back.
So one of them that she met was Maka Ukiu, who had a huge mouth filled with many sharp teeth. Pili and Noha, other Ma'o, disguised themselves as harmless logs in a river and were anything but. And Ma'olau, who had jaws that were strong enough to crush a canoe in half. As Haiaki was making her way, she notices a bridge that crosses over a treacherous ravine. But just in the nick of time, she notices that it's a Ma'o's tongue, one that had been conjured up by Kikipua.
You're doing great.
But Haiaki uses her wits and courage and is able to defeat all of the Ma'o and save her sister's lover. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, but then as they're making their way back, because they don't make it in time, her sister loses her shit, and they also fall in love. And so
I think I covered this in our last Hawaii episode where I covered the legends of Pele.
Yeah. So then she got real mad. So that's how some of the islands, they say, were formed, because of her spewing all sorts of stuff.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Another popular story is the Ma'o of Kipu Falls. So there's a popular swimming spot right outside of Lihue that all the locals know about.
At me.
I don't know why either. So especially the teenagers know about this spot. One hot summer day, a teenager and his group of friends decided to spend the day cooling off at the local waterfall and swimming hole. Some of the teen's friends were sitting at the top of the falls, some were swinging on the rope swing, but the teen, who was sitting on the shore, decided to swim to the rocks in order to climb out of the whole swimming hole area. So it was easier to swim across and climb out on the other shore rather than trying to like climb through the jungle and through all the trees and stuff to get back to that shore.
So, like, you go in one way but out another?
So like if you enter over here,
Yeah.
it's easier to swim from over here to this shore rather than to get out on this shore and walk around like the watering hole, because then you're walking through the trees to like kind of get to the place where you would exit. Like here's the entrance.
Uh-huh.
This is where you need to go.
Yeah.
This is the exit. Here's the exit.
Entrance and exit.
Entrance and exit
Uh-huh.
to like the forest.
Yeah.
So all around you is woods, and then there's
the forest.
Yeah, it's like a swimming hole in the middle of all
I thought
these
you were
trees.
talking about the swimming hole to get in and out of the swimming hole.
Oh
not
yeah,
the
no.
forest.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes more sense.
So the boy was a very strong and confident swimmer, but halfway to the rocks, trouble struck. He suddenly went underwater and was able to get back to the surface.
Was
No-
not?
Yeah, was unable to get back to the surface.
Oh, I
Like
thought
he
you said was.
No matter how much he struggled and thrashed, he just couldn't get back to the surface. It felt as if someone or something was holding his ankles. The more he struggled, the tighter the grip got. Suddenly, a thought popped into the boy's head. I'm sorry. The moment that thought entered his head, whatever had been holding him just let go. He finally made his way back to his friends, and they all asked what happened. After he explained, they asked him what he had apologized for, but the boy didn't know. Thinking it was his final moments, he had been saying sorry to his mom for all of the things he had done. He was sorry for not being a better student and better person, and he was sorry for being in the place where he knew he shouldn't be.
Oh.
To this day, too many people have been injured or have died in these falls that fences and boulders have been put up to keep people from swimming and from encountering the ma'o as well.
Mm-hmm.
Today, many Hawaiians regard freshwater sources as sacred sites and places that should be treated with the utmost respect and reverence. There are signs that one should look out for before getting close to water, signs to know that it is clear of ma'o. When the foliage surrounding water is lush and green, that means the ma'o is absent. If that's the case, it's safe to swim and fish in those waters. But if the grass has a greenish-yellow hue, it's not safe to swim or even be there because a ma'o is home.
Yeah.
Another indicator is that if a leaf floats on the surface of the water, the ma'o is absent, but if the leaf sinks, it is there and you shouldn't be.
Interesting.
It should be a reminder that regardless of if a ma'o is there or not, you should always respect nature.
100%.
Okay, then we have the pigman demigod Kamapua, who is half man and half pig.
Okay.
This demigod is quite a force to be reckoned with. First and foremost, he is known as a trickster who has a quick wit, an insatiable appetite, and an uncanny ability to get out of even the tightest of spots.
Well, he is half pig and they eat everything.
Yeah, they can just squeeze out of anything.
I don't know about that part.
The legend goes that Kamapua was born to a mortal mother, a high-ranking chiefess, and a divine father, the god of wild boars. He was born
that makes sense.
He was born as a piglet, and from that moment on, Kamapua was marked for greatness but also for mischief.
But piglets are so cute.
They are so cute. But then there's another story that goes. Haina was
So
married.
wait, when did he turn into half man?
I will get to that part.
Okay.
So now that was just one story, him
Okay.
being born a piglet. Here's another story.
Okay.
Not being born a piglet.
Okay.
Haina was married to Olopana, an influential chief. But Olopana was old while Hina was young and full of energy. But because she was his wife, she still laid in bed with him every night. But her heart belonged to Kahikaula, her husband's younger brother. She would invite her brother-in-law to go berry picking with her often. They would talk intimately on their meetups.
Not berry picking.
Not berry picking.
Scandalous.
Olopana, knowing he was old, resented the friendship between his wife and his brother, but he never interfered. It was only Hina who knew if Kahikaula was also her lover. So no one knows. She's the only one. She went to the grave with that secret.
Someone found out.
Well, no one knows.
Well, you just told me.
No, he didn't. I said they would go intimately pick berries.
Yeah, but you just told me that they were lovers.
I said no one knows other than her if they were lovers.
Oh. I didn't
Yeah.
hear the if part.
It was only Hina who knew if.
I didn't hear if.
But when Hina gave birth, Olopana refused to acknowledge that the baby was his son.
We're lovers.
Let Kahikaula claim him, he said bitterly to his estranged wife. I named this child Kamapua, or Hog Child. His throat was choked with anger and revenge.
Oh.
Growing up, Kamapua wanted nothing more than for his father to love and accept him, but that never happened. So Kamapua grew full of anger and rage. As he grew up, he and other young men plundered and pillaged Olopama's land. One day, drunk with his new power, Kamapua had his upper body and head tattooed in a black and menacing design. He shaved his head, grew short bristle on his scalp and chin, and cut himself a short cloak out of the skin of a wild boar. After months of wreaking havoc, Kamapua was captured, but he was able to escape, and when he did, he went to find Olopana. I keep saying these different. When he did, he brutally murdered him.
Ooh.
Kamapua tried to find love again with his mother, like motherly love,
Yeah.
and her mother's new husband, Kahika'iula.
So she ended up marrying the brother.
Yeah. But
see, I don't know why you said if.
I had to add the suspense. Keep the suspense there. But Kahika'iula dismissed him, claiming he had no son. This changed Kamapua into a hateful man.
It would solve everyone's problem if mom would just be forthcoming.
What? And said, this is your son? Or,
Yeah.
like, this is your son?
Yeah.
You know, it should have been. But maybe at that time they didn't know whose kid it was. Because no matter how old her husband is, he can still have kids.
That's true.
Yeah. So if she's
But
getting
they didn't have
both of them-
Viagra back then.
And they probably didn't have paternity tests.
Right, but I mean, if he was old.
Oh, who knows?
Yeah.
He's a god. He can do his thing.
Oh, I forgot he was a god.
Growing up, Kamapua really made a name for himself. He was a fierce warrior, a cunning strategist, and also quite the ladies' man.
Does he get magical powers because he's half god?
But he also had godlike skills. Being able to change his appearance as well as duplicate his own appearance around him. Kamapua had heard of a gorgeous young woman named Pele. Kamapua found her, saw her, and fell in love. Love me, be my wife, he pleaded to her. But Pele turned away in disgust. You are a pig and nothing but the son of a pig, she shrieked.
Ooh.
This may have been how the two first met, but what Kamapua may be most famous for is his relationship with Pele herself. But what their relationship was is a bit debated. Some tales depict them as passionate lovers, as explosive as the volcanoes on the island. But other stories depict them as bitter rivals, constantly fighting for dominance over the islands.
I mean, it's a thin line between lovers to enemies.
There really is. There is one story that talks about an epic showdown between the two. Pele chased Kamapua all across Hawaii, throwing molten lava and fiery rocks at him. But being a demigod, Kamapua was able to avoid it all. He was able to shift forms at will. He could transform into a fish to escape her wrath, then a plant to avoid her detection, and then a boulder to withstand what she would throw at him. For days and days, this chase went on, ultimately reshaping the entire terrain of the islands. They would become close again, then anger would explode, and the two would separate.
Sounds like a toxic relationship.
Very toxic. In one final moment, when Pele had run away from Kamapua, he noticed a volcano. He knew where Pele was hiding, that was under the volcano. She was there with her family, and he knew that when the volcano erupted, it would take her. When it did finally erupt, he bid her farewell and escaped. But Pele didn't perish. 3 seasons later,
she's a goddess.
Right. 3 seasons later, she gave birth to her and Kamapua's child.
3 seasons?
Well, like 3 seasons, like.
No, I can't understand what you're saying, but
it makes it sound so much longer.
It sounds like TV shows. Like in season 5, she came back.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to try to pronounce their child's name.
Okay.
Opelu Nui Keu Halilo.
Okay.
Yeah. The child became the ancestor of certain chiefs and common people. Seeing Kamapua in her child, Pele realized her true and deep hurt of longing. Kamapua had been seen as the counterbalance to Pele's power. She embodies and represents the raw and untamed energy of volcanoes. He embodies the fertile, life-giving force of the land itself.
I was going to say, he's not calm.
No.
So I was like, where's the balance?
Legends also say that Kamapua could transform into a kikui tree. So I just wanted to include this story because I like it.
Okay.
So one day, while in this tree form, a man beat his wife to death and buried her body under the tree. Kamapua saw that the woman had been a good person, so he raised her to a new life, and he damned her husband to death.
Hell yeah.
Kamapua is celebrated in Hawaiian culture to this day. Quote, his name is invoked in chants and hula dances that honor the enduring power of the natural world. Now, Kamapua is known to protect pigs in Kohala. He protects the abundance of Hawaii by roaming the falls, but more than anything, he protects the pain of a wounded heart.
Aw.
I know!
He's a nice guy, kind of.
I mean, he just wanted
Good
to be
intentions.
loved,
He's got good
and he
intentions.
never was loved by the people he wanted to love
Yeah.
him.
Good intention.
Yeah. All right, and then our final one. I have a question to start this with.
Okay.
Mackenzie,
Yes.
what do you think of when you think of sharks? Describe them to me.
I think of Jaws.
Okay. Big, scary creatures.
Yeah, like the movie.
Okay. In Hawaiian culture, they are more seen as divine beings, powerful ancestors, and even protective spirits.
Oh, I was going to say, yeah, they're really important in Hawaiian culture.
They were Aumakua, or family gods. Many families can trace their lineage back to a particular shark ancestor who would serve as the family's guardian spirit or protector.
That's cool.
It's really cool. They had the power to guide their descendants through life's challenges, providing them with strength, wisdom, and even supernatural abilities.
See, I like those sharks. They sound nice.
These ones are nice.
Yeah.
Essentially, they are spiritual beings who are able to take on the form of animals or objects and serve as messengers between humans and gods.
So is it not just regularly a shark? Or yes, and the shark changes.
I think it's a shark, like presents as a shark,
Mhm.
but can change if it needs to deliver a certain message to the family.
Ah, okay.
I could be interpreting that completely incorrectly,
That makes sense.
but one of the most famous shark, Aumakua, was Kamo, who I talked about earlier.
Oh yeah, I forgot. He was Shark Boy.
Yeah, he is the brother of Pele. Shark Boy and Lava Girl.
Oh my god.
No, I don't think that has anything to do with it, but it's kind of cool. So he was able to shapeshift into any fish in the sea, but his preference was to be a massive great white shark. He was believed to patrol the waters using his power to protect the land and its people from harm. And while Kamo used his powers for good, there of course had to be some that would use their powers for evil. These creatures are said to take on human form and walk among the living, then, using their charm and beauty, would lure unsuspecting victims into the water. It is believed that Kamo was inspired by great white sharks or tiger sharks. They are strong sharks who
I
are
thought tiger sharks were gentle though. Or is that a whale shark?
whale sharks are gentle. Nursing sharks are not.
Oh, tiger shark is not?
I don't think they are.
Okay, maybe I'm getting confused with whale shark. I know bull sharks are really nasty.
They're considered aggressive and dangerous.
So I'm thinking whale shark.
I think so.
Okay, cool. Continue.
So they're strong sharks who are at the top of the food chain, which is why Kamo would take on their form, dangerous when needed, but when respected, will show that respect back.
Sounds like today. If you do the same with sharks.
Yeah.
I don't know about protective. But
He is known to guide fishermen and lost ships back to shore.
yeah, okay. But sharks today don't do that.
The most famous of these nefarious sharks was Nanaue. Nanaue was half human on his mom's side and half shark god on his father's side. His father was actually Kamo, and his mother was a beautiful woman named Kale.
Okay.
I'm not going to make you a family tree.
That's
Well, actually, I can. Kamo
Mm-hmm.
and Kale
Mm-hmm.
had Nanaue,
Okay.
and so his aunt would be Pele.
Right.
Yeah.
And he's a troublemaker.
He's nefarious.
Okay.
He was born with what was described as a strange deformity.
Oh yeah, he's half shark.
Well, this was a deformity, a different deformity. He's a shark, that's fine. But he had a small circular mouth on his back that resembled a shark's jaw. His father warned that he could not eat meat, for if he did, the shark side of him would take over completely. But Kale's father didn't listen and fed Nanui meat, which
Wait, I thought you said, who said he couldn't have meat?
his dad,
But then
Kamo.
but then you just said his dad.
No, Kale's father, his mom's father, his grandpa.
Okay.
His grandpa didn't listen.
Okay, sorry, I forgot mom's name. I thought that was the son's name.
No, the son's name is Nanaui.
Sorry. Okay.
I know I'm pronouncing these so well, so I don't know why you're not getting it.
Okay, sorry, I forgot. Okay, so
So his grandpa fed him meat,
Okay.
which unleashed his dark shark side. For years, Nanaui would follow people to the sea, transform into a shark, and either bite or entirely eat them.
Oof.
Legend goes that he would transform into a handsome young man. He would walk among the islands,
What if
making...
he's got a big old mouth on his back.
No one can see it. He covers it. He would walk among the islands, making friends with the locals and eventually earning their trust. Then, when the moment was right, he would lure his victims into the water, where he would finally reveal his true form before killing the victim to satisfy his hunger. For years, he continued to do this, terrorizing the people of Hawaii until a clever kahuna, which is a priest, came along. The kahuna found out that the way to prevent Nanaui from transforming was to place a special lei around his neck, which prevented him from transforming back into his human form. So he was trapped in a shark body, driven out to sea, never to be seen again. The stories of Nanaui and other shape-shifting sharks serve as a reminder of the dangers that lurk beneath the surface. Today, sharks are respected as divine beings, but are also recognized for their potential for destruction. So there, we have some legends from Hawaii, all as a stark reminder to always respect nature and the one earth that we have.
Yeah, man. Heard that. I will die on the hill that if we incorporated, which I know we have, but if we really look to native peoples,
Mm-hmm.
all around the world,
Oh, 100%.
then I feel like we could easily save the planet in 2 seconds.
Oh, we've talked about this multiple times on
Yeah.
this podcast. We truly believe that.
And I like learning about these because, like, you can kind of see where people get their thinking from for, like,
Yes.
certain situations and
It's
things
so
like that.
fascinating.
Yeah, so that's really cool.
Yeah. So, yeah, some little creatures.
Everything was better when people believed
monsters.
in more than one god.
Oh, yeah. Yes, there was, like, more love.
Well, I wouldn't go that far.
Okay, there was more respect for certain things.
Yeah, because there was a god for it.
Minus, like, human sacrifice.
Yeah, but all in good faith, maybe.
Okay.
Maybe they just sacrificed the bad people.
See, I'd be totally on board with that.
Mhm.
Sacrifice the bad people.
Yeah, we don't need them here anyway.
Or, like, death row and stuff.
That takes forever.
Well, yeah, but, like, if we had death row and we were sacrificing, then we could we're going way too off tangent. Like, okay, so that's Hawaii.
All of a sudden, we're going to get arrested for murder. We should quit while we're ahead.
I agree. All right, Mackenzie, what tale do you have tonight?
So,
Oh, great.
I typically try to stay away from cases that involve children,
Yeah.
but there was something about this story that I kept being drawn towards. The story is sad and does not have a happy ending,
Great.
but it does bring awareness to some serious issues in our country: child abuse and our child care system.
Good. I can see why you were drawn to it.
So sorry, not sorry if this episode gets a little soapboxy, but if you are pro-life and not advocating for these systems to be better, then you are not pro-life and you are pro-controlling women.
I like to call it pro-birth.
Pro-controlling women.
Well, that too.
Yeah.
But once the birth is done, they don't care.
Yeah. That's why they just want to control women.
Yeah.
Yeah. So before we get into our main story, I'm going to share some statistics about Child Protective Services, which I'll be calling CPS,
Mm-hmm.
and child abuse from the National Children's Alliance. So 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 13 boys in the U.S. are estimated to experience child sexual abuse. 1 billion children globally are estimated to experience sexual violence. An estimated 558,899 children were victims of abuse and neglect in the U.S. in 2022, the most recent year for which this national data. That's 8 children out of every 1,000.
Wow.
U.S. child welfare authorities look into the safety of more than 7.5 million kids annually. Of those, around 3 million children received an investigation or alternative response from Child Protective Service agencies. In 2022, an estimated 1,990 children died from abuse and neglect in the United States.
How many?
1,990.
Wow.
A number consistently on the rise over the previous 5 years. Boys have a higher child fatality rate at 3.26 per 100,000 compared to girls at 2.25. African American child fatalities are at 6 per 100,000 and are over 3 times greater than those of white children, which are 1 to 2, and nearly 4 times greater than Hispanic, which is also about 1 to 2. But they have the decimal, but technically a person's not.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
In 2022, a reported 434,000 perpetrators abused or neglected a child. In substantiated child abuse cases, 70% of children were victimized by a parent or legal guardian.
How many?
76.
Okay, you just said that weird.
3/4 or 74% of victims are neglected. So when there are cases of child abuse and neglect, or like, and CPS has to be involved and things like that, 3/4 of those cases are typically victims of neglect.
Wow.
17% are physically abused, 11 are sexually abused, and 0.2 are sex trafficked.
Trafficked.
Thank you. Trafficked.
Ugh.
Yeah. In 2021, 203,770 children under 18 entered foster care in the United States at a rate of 3 per 1,000. The rate of entry has hovered at 3 or 4 per 1,000 for 2 decades. Kids ages 1 to 5 make up the largest share, about 29% in 2021, of children entering care. National data shows that Black and American Indian and Alaska Native children continue to be overrepresented among these entering foster care. In 2021, Black children represented 20% of those entering care, but only 14% of the total child population. So there's less children, but yet more of them.
A higher percentage.
Yeah. While American Indian and Alaska Native kids make up 2% of those entering care and about 1% of the child population.
Mm-hmm.
So again, more going in than.
Yep.
Over a third of foster children and youth experience more than 2 placements each year, meaning their living arrangements change at least 3 times a year.
Wow.
At the state level in 2021, this figure ranged from 24% to 51%.
Jeez.
Child welfare agencies are working to minimize these moves as they are disruptive, stressful, and often traumatizing.
Yeah.
Stable relationships and home environments are critical for healthy child and youth development. So, Peter Boy Kema was 6 years old when his parents reported him missing in the winter of 1997. The community gathered around the family and the search was on for Peter Boy. That's what they call it.
Yeah.
That's like his name.
Yeah.
There were bumper stickers made saying, "So where's Peter?" Signs and flyers were handed out and placed all over the community of Hilo, where the family resided. However, Peter Boy's parents knew that this would all lead to nothing but years of frustration and unanswered questions.
Mm-hmm.
The community held out hope that the 6-year-old would someday be found alive and returned to his grandparents and siblings.
So he lived with his grandparents?
Not at the time.
Okay.
His parents claimed that he was dropped off with a relative in A'ala Park. Auntie Rose Makuakane, we don't think she's a real person.
Oh, okay.
Or she might be a real person, but they didn't actually drop him off.
Okay.
Peter Kema Sr. told authorities at the time, quote, "Well, the last place I left him was Oahu," but everyone knew better. Peter Boy's grandmother, Yolanda Acole, told reporters, quote, "They know where he is. Definitely they know where he is."
The parents. Mm-hmm. Okay.
In 1998, Peter Boy's parents made a bizarre and unconvincing plea for help. Hounded for answers and publicly vilified as child abusers, they stuck together. In 2005, the state's Child Protective Services released thousands of pages of documents on the Kema case. These files detailed the extent of the abuse that the children were subjected to and highlighted the state's failure to protect them. Peter Boy Kema was born in May of 1991 to Peter Kema Sr. and Jalen Kema. He was the youngest of 3 and suffered so much in his short life. The day he was born, he had to be flown from Hilo to Honolulu with heart and lung problems. He ended up being hospitalized for almost 3 weeks before going home to his parents.
Wow.
The couple was already suspected of abusing his half-brother and sister, Chantel and Alan, from Jalen's previous marriage. When Peter Boy was 3 months old, CPS records show that Jalen Kema had brought him to the hospital with a swollen knee, and she said he had been acting fussy. X-rays later show that Peter Boy had multiple fractures to his arms, legs, and ribs.
Ugh.
The doctor reported, quote, "The appearance and distribution of these fractures are characteristics of child abuse."
Well, yeah, kids fall,
Especially
they're
a
not
3-month-old.
but they're not going to do that.
Right. CPS took all 3 children to put them with their grandparents, Jimmy and Yolanda Acole, Jalen's parents, in Kona. The Kema Acole children thrived with their grandparents. Old videos of the boy show him flashing an adorable, wide smile. In 1993, the Kemas had another child, Lena Acole. While they were getting CPS counseling and parenting training, she was also placed with Grandma and Grandpa. All the children were very close. Alan, Peter Boy's brother, recalled, quote, "I remember playing, pretending like we were Power Rangers, playing in the park. Life was great for the children and their grandparents loved having them there, but sadly, that was all going to end."
Ugh. Because we wouldn't be covering if it weren't.
I know. Despite a history of abuse and warnings from social workers and family members, CPS returned the children to their parents after 3 years of living with their grandparents.
Ugh. It's like, okay, here's my thing. I get if you had some issues and you worked through it and you are going to be good parents, but it's hard to prove that.
This is not one of those cases.
I know. Well, obviously not. But it's hard to prove that, and it's so sad that they returned them.
Yeah. But it was easy to prove the alternative.
Yes.
And they did it anyway.
Right.
Which I think is so much worse.
It is. Yes, absolutely.
Ideally, the goal is obviously to return to parents.
Yes.
But when you have this many people saying don't do it, and you do it
and
anyway,
then you do it,
that's crazy.
Yeah.
Many claim that returning Peter Boy to his parents was a death sentence.
No.
The next part of the story is going to be the hardest to listen to, so please skip ahead if needed.
Oh, Mackenzie.
Because we're going to go into the details of what happened. So, skip ahead.
I think I have to go.
Sorry. All 4 children experienced abuse from their parents, but Peter Boy suffered it the worst.
And was he the oldest?
No, he was the second youngest.
Oh.
Yeah. Alan recalled, quote, "He was always covered up from head to toe with jacket, pants. You could never see any of the bruises." The abuse wasn't just physical injuries. Jimmy Acole, Peter's grandfather, said Peter Boy's parents would, quote, "put him in a trash bag and let him eat feces and everything else."
Oh my God.
Peter Boy would also be chained to the bed overnight. and when the family went out in public, he was stuffed into the trunk of the family car. The youngest, Nicole, Lena, later said, quote, "Our dad said he was being punished for doing something bad. We'd go to the beach and he'd be in the trunk. We'd go to the store and he'd be in the trunk." A wound on his arm would become infected because his parents did not seek medical care. Instead, his parents locked him in a room.
And so did CPS never continue to check on him?
We'll get there. The wound smelled of rotting flesh, and his siblings would call it the stink room.
Ugh.
The siblings would be punished by being locked in the stink room with Peter Boy. At a later court hearing, Big Island Deputy Prosecutor Rick Roy Damerville detailed Peter Boy's fatal injuries. He was choking up as he described it.
Ugh, I bet.
Quote, "A forensic pathologist will testify that given the nature of Pepe, Peter Boy's injuries, Pepe died as a result of septic shock and as a result of the parents not timely obtaining medical care for him.
Oh.
Peter Boy died in the summer of 1997, and the Kemas burned and disposed of the 6-year-old's body. A few months later, they would report him missing. Months turned into years, but Peter Boy's family never gave up. Peter Boy's grandmother, Yolanda Acole, died in 2008 without answers that she had waited so long for.
Ugh.
Before she passed, she told her husband, Jimmy, "Don't give up." In 2012, Mitch Roth was elected as the new Big Island prosecutor and vowed to chip away at unsolved murder cases. For the law enforcement community on the island, it was never a question of who killed Peter Boy. His parents were always the only suspects.
Mm-hmm.
Despite well-documented child abuse and multiple accusations by their other children, Peter and Jalen Kema were never charged with the murder of their 6-year-old son. In November 2014, Hawaii County Prosecutor Mitch Roth announced that investigators were reopening the case. But it wouldn't be easy. There was still no body and no eyewitness. In November of 2015, the Kemas were arrested for welfare and gun charges. Both of the charges were unrelated to the murder, but it was a chance to separate the couple and hopefully get Jalen to turn against her husband.
Mm-hmm.
Lena Acole, a new mom herself at this point, hoped to offer her mom emotional support. So she's now a mom herself,
Mm-hmm.
and she was hoping that by offering this emotional support and having a relationship with her grandson, that it would get her to tell the truth.
Okay.
So offering the emotional support not like a bribe, but like essentially like,
But being like,
you can have this possible relationship
with
if
your
you-
grandson.
Right, if you tell the truth.
Okay.
Lena recalled telling her mom while visiting her in jail, quote, "You could do so much better. I have a son who someday wants to know what his grandma's like."
Wait, so her mom's in jail?
Yeah, this for the other charges, for the welfare and gun charges.
Oh, okay, sorry.
But Lena was also hesitant to let Kema get too close. She refused to let her hold her son and kept the meetings brief.
Well, I can't blame her at all.
100%. While awaiting trial for welfare fraud, Jalen Kema bailed out of jail into supporting her family and law enforcement by going back to her husband. But finally, on April 28, 2016, Peter Kema Sr. was arrested outside his workplace as a result of a grand jury indictment. Getting a murder conviction, proving the case beyond a reasonable doubt after 20 years and with no body would be a huge challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Prosecutors had to charge murder because time had run out for any other possible charge, including manslaughter. If they lost at trial, the Kemas would have escaped justice forever. In December 2016, Jalen Kema pleaded guilty to manslaughter under a deal that would have her testify against her husband.
Ooh.
Quote,
I thought that wasn't allowed.
"If you can sign away that right."
Oh, okay.
Quote, "I failed to protect my son," she told the court. Knowing Jalen Kema was going to take the stand at his upcoming murder trial, Peter Kema was ready to make a deal of his own. To be okay with changing the first-degree murder charge to manslaughter, Prosecutor Roth wanted to ensure the family got the answers they had been looking for the last 20 years. Part of the condition of his deal, Peter Kema Sr. had to reveal everything that had happened that led to his son's death, the details of the torture and what finally led to him dying. Most importantly, he had to say how he disposed of the remains and lead police to where he left them. If they couldn't find Peter Boy, Kema was going to have to take a polygraph to ensure that he was leading police to at least the truth.
Wow.
On April 5th, Peter Kema Sr. pleaded guilty to the death of his son. 3 weeks later, Kema led law enforcement to a remote location along the Puna coast south of Kenzie State Park.
You covered that.
I know, because it has my name.
Exactly.
He told them that he threw a cardboard box with Peter Boy's remains into the ocean.
Ah.
Authorities took Peter Boy's siblings, his grandfather, and his aunt to the undeveloped area. At the site, the family said a prayer and lit a candle. They didn't leave anything else behind because police still wanted to conduct a thorough search of the area. As they watched the waves crash against the jagged rocks, they knew they were never going to be able to bring Peter Boy home. For days, county, state, and federal crews combed the area on land and in the water. They found nothing.
Well, how many years had it been?
20.
Yeah.
Decades of hurricanes and high tides had washed away any evidence of his remains. And shortly after directing police to the spot, Peter Kema Sr. took a lie detector test to prove that he was telling the truth, and he passed. In court, Jalen Kema admitted that she didn't seek help for Peter Boy as he was slowly dying of an infection. She then helped her husband cover up the crime.
Oh my God.
Jalen Kema was sentenced to a year behind bars, which she had already served when she faced a judge in June 2017.
Jeez.
Yep. Her husband, Peter, avoided a life sentence with his plea agreement. But the family says the plea deals were worth it to get closure, to see their grandfather finally fulfill his promise to his dying wife.
Well, then it's kind of one of those things where it's like, it's not the justice that you want, but as long as the family finds closure in it, you kind of have to be fine with it.
And that's kind of like why the prosecutor, like, he hated the idea of changing it.
Yeah.
And so he wanted to, like, make sure that the family, because they knew that if he did get convicted of murder, that, like, he would take that with him.
Right.
And the biggest thing for them was finding out the truth.
Right.
And especially, like, where he was buried.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's why the prosecutor was like, okay, if I can get them those answers.
Yeah.
And he got the maximum sentence of 20 years, which, you know, to me is not good enough.
No, I don't think it's good enough at all. But yeah, again, as long as the family got the closure that they wanted.
Right. Exactly.
You know.
Lena Akol was born with Kema as her last name, but she later changed it, severing ties to her parents. Her grandparents, Jimmy and Yolanda Akol, raised her after Peter Boy disappeared, and she refers to them as her parents. In a later interview, she said, "As far as I know, my dad is sitting right next to me," motioning to her grandfather.
Aww.
And my mom is buried in Hololo Cemetery. Many say that Peter Boy's death could have been avoided, and the fault did not lie solely with his parents. Jimmy Akol said it was agonizing knowing his grandson was in danger and no one would intervene.
Right.
He said, quote, "Let the state learn a lesson this time. Do not let this happen again."
And you can only do so much as a grandparent. Like,
And
even though you're related, you can only do so much.
literally, he did everything.
Exactly.
Peter Boy and his siblings were happiest with their grandparents. Home videos of the children showed them smiling, laughing, and playing. So sending them back was against clear warnings from psychologists, social workers, and even other foster parents.
Jeez.
Including Arena Chispro.
Yeah, because you would think you'd want them to be in the place where they're the happiest, the safest.
And if multiple people, even outside of the family, are saying don't do that.
Yes.
So this person in 1994, after hearing the Kemas were getting their kids back, she wrote a letter to the agency voicing concern over the placement.
Wow.
And she didn't hold back. "I'm here to tell you it's wrong," she wrote. "This is where I say your system sucks." All caps, many exclamation points.
Good.
The 2-page letter ends, quote, "I just felt I had to say something on Peter Jr.'s behalf because someday he's going to find out what happened and he's going to wonder why no one helped him." About a month before Peter Boy died, his grandfather saw him at a funeral in Kona. Peter Boy had bruises on his face and a large bandage on his arm.
Like, that should be enough to take you away.
It's crazy. Like, truly, it's crazy. Jimmy confronted his daughter about it, but she claimed that it was just a cut and that a doctor had examined it. Both of those were lies.
Yeah.
And it was the wound that would end up killing him. Jimmy went to Kona CPS that same day, but the social worker there refused to help. He was told that the Kona office couldn't help because the Kemas lived in Hilo.
See, things like that, too, are so stupid.
Jimmy agrees with you, because he later said, quote, "In my way of thinking, there is no such thing as this is not my jurisdiction."
Right.
It is. No matter where you are, if somebody calls for help.
Yes.
That was the worst thing. Nobody listened. CPS acknowledged reunification with parents is still a priority, but the state will abandon the goal when a child is in danger.
Good.
And Kaylee Perez, administrator of the Child Welfare Services branch, now, I don't know if she still is. I think the article was written like 2018-ish.
Okay.
So at the time.
Yeah.
Said that if a child is placed for 15 of the last 22 months out of the home, quote, "we move towards termination of parental rights."
Oh, wow.
Peter Boy and his siblings spent about 36 months with their loving grandparents before being placed back in the Kema's home. If that policy had been in place in some articles from the same source said 1997, and then some said 1996.
Okay.
But if he was 6 years old, it would have had to have been 1997.
Okay.
So just want to throw that out there.
I mean, but it's also 33 months. So it could be that they counted it at the beginning of the 33, which would be a different year.
Okay, yeah, you're right. I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yes. So if that policy had been in place in 1996, Peter Boy might still be alive today. Perez said the agency has made other changes as well, including monthly face-to-face meetings with children, parents, and foster parents. The practice of home visits was done with the Kemas. Caseworkers reported making numerous visits, but the visits, quote, failed to turn up any evidence of Peter Boy and were apparently never followed up. The court-appointed investigator into the case, Special Master Stephen Lane, said the monthly meetings were useless without someone following up on the findings.
Duh.
He later said, quote, I can't say that I've seen any dramatic changes. This continues to happen with a degree of frequency that's very disheartening. The new attorney for Peter Boy's siblings, Randall Rosenberg, said that even though the agency has added new layers of protection, they're still short-staffed and caseworkers are often overwhelmed by the workload. He said abused kids continue to get lost in the system.
Mm-hmm.
Solving the Peter Boy mystery did not wash away the grief over his death, the resentment towards his parents, or the belief that others should be held accountable. But Peter Boy's family was finally able to move forward. Chantel Acole, I don't know if she's the oldest, but she's the oldest daughter, said that closure means that they can find comfort in their faith. That Peter Boy, whom she always affectionately called Pepe, is with his grandma again. She told reporters, quote, at least we can get closure that Pepe is never going to come home again, but he's been in heaven. I know that Pepe greeted her in heaven, and that makes me proud, makes me know that he's okay. And the family was eventually able to hold a memorial service for him in Kona.
Ugh.
So I recognize that this is, in conclusion, doesn't feel right.
Right.
I recognize that this is a very heavy story, and so I kind of wanted to end on a slightly more positive note.
Okay.
And something that I believe is that when you want people to enact change, you can't always put them down for what they're not doing. And that you should also praise the work that has already been done.
Okay.
To me, personally, if someone is constantly berating me for what I'm not doing, but not even recognizing or acknowledging the work I have done,
yes,
it's going to make me not want to do any more work.
Correct.
And so in certain situations, I think that, yes, we need to call out the things that are still wrong, but also acknowledge, like, you have put in the work and we appreciate that and we see the difference.
Yes.
But keep going.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
And so because that's how I feel, I wanted to give some more encouraging statistics kind of at the end about our foster care system. Okay. So placements with relatives increased from 25 to 35% from 2000 to 2021, while placement in groups, homes, or other facilities were cut in half from 18% to 9%.
Okay.
So ideally, you probably want them to be placed with relatives.
Oh, absolutely. 100%.
Yeah. The latest data showed that 214,542 children and youth exited foster care in 2021, and just under half, 47%, were reunited with their parent or primary caretaker, down from 57% in 2000.
Okay.
I don't know if that's considered good.
I think we can make it assume that it's good because now they're going back to parents who can take care of them.
That's kind of how I looked at it.
That's how it sounds if you're putting it in the good section of this.
Yeah.
Because it could be before they're just returning them back, like in Peter Boy's situation.
Correct.
But in this one, they're going back to families who are ready and who have taken the steps to to welcome their kids back.
Well, and that's what I'm hoping, because this next part says adoptions from foster care have increased over the last 2 decades, from 70% of kids going to adoptive homes in 2000 to 25% in 2021.
Wow.
So hopefully that number means that maybe they were adopted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Children exiting care to live with legal guardians also jumped from 3% to 12% in the same period.
Wow.
Other common outcomes for children and youth who cannot return to their parents included living with other relatives and emancipation, also known as aging out of the foster care.
Right.
Of the more than 54,000 kids adopted out of the child welfare system in 2021, over half were young kids ages 1 to 5, consistent with previous years. Most of these adoptions are by the foster parents, either relatives or non-relatives, who cared for the child while in foster care. One of my coworkers is currently in that process.
Of adopting?
Yeah, so I don't know how long you have to foster, and technically they live in West Virginia, but she, a few months ago, essentially brought him home.
Aww.
I think he's 8 or 9.
Oh.
Something like that. And so technically they're foster parents, but then eventually they're going to move into adoption.
To make sure that it's a good home, that they work together.
And when she came back to work a week later and she was talking about it, she was already saying that's my son.
Oh.
Yeah. So
see, I love stories like that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very sweet.
Yeah, that is very sweet.
Yeah. The federal government's Child Bureau provides additional foster care statistics, such as the length of time children spend in care. They reported that, unfortunately, the median amount of time in foster care has increased over the last decade from 13.2 months in 2011 to 17.5 months in 2021, based on children who exited care in each year. However, the percentage of kids who spent 5+ years in care declined slightly from 7% to 5% in the same period.
Okay.
Among children who exited foster care in 2021, about a third, or 35%, were there less than a year, while nearly half spent 1 to 3 years in care and only 12% in foster care for 3+ years.
Okay.
There are a plethora of resources, including the links that I used to gather this information, that you can look into if you would like to learn more, and you can learn how to help as well.
And of course, that'll be in our show notes, and some of those links to help we can put in the actual description,
Yeah.
like the show notes instead of just our works cited.
100%. And also, one more reminder that if you work with children in any capacity, that you are a mandated reporter, and I always say that it is better safe than sorry.
I had to report once.
I've never had to report, but I've known cases within my school where other people have had to.
Well, I reported because I saw bruises where bruises should not appear.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah, so I like brought it up to where it needed to go, and
Yeah, that's the thing. People can be really afraid to report that kind of thing, but you remain anonymous.
and again, better safe than sorry.
Better
I would
safe than
rather report
sorry.
something and it not be anything than to have those
Yeah.
questions of if it's something and you don't say anything and it ended up being something.
Well, and they typically, at least this is how my understanding of it works. When they call to talk to you about it, to get the information, that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
That's where your involvement ends.
Yep, that's all
And-
mine was. I
Right.
told my supervisors kind
Yeah.
of my concern, and then I got a phone call. I remember I was on vacation. I was walking around the beach when it happened. I spoke about like why I reported and kind of what I had seen,
Yeah.
and then that was it. I didn't hear anything else about it, and that was.
Yeah.
I mean, you want to
so-
hear like a conclusion, but
Sure, but
don't.
it's I feel like sometimes people are worried to come forward because of repercussions of some kind,
right?
but you literally are just reporting.
Yes,
And that's as far as it goes, and better safe than sorry.
100%.
And yeah, there have been times where like I know that it's been called and that was the one and only time it was needed, and then not
Mhm.
needed after that. Parent stepped up in whatever way they needed to, which is good.
Yeah.
And so I'm grateful I've never had to do something like that, but working in education, I've definitely known colleagues who have had to do it
Mhm.
or interacted with students who've in the past had CPS come to their home.
Right.
So it's always better to be safe than sorry. And if you're pro-life, then you need to be pro-life from beginning to end.
Mhm.
And if you're not, then you're more concerned about controlling other people whose lives have nothing to do with yours.
Mhm.
And
And if you're pro-life, you should be on every adoption foster list.
Mhm.
That's all I'm saying.
and
You're going to force these women to give birth if they
Mhm.
can't or if they don't want to.
right.
And now you need to you need to have responsibility after the baby is here.
The children that we bring into this world are innocent.
Mhm.
They did not choose to be here. We chose to have them here.
Yep.
And to then turn around and give them a terrible life and
Mhm.
not care for them and love them like they deserve
Yeah.
is why I'm pro-choice.
Mhm.
And people who are pro-life that are so against pro-choice, to me, that's why I say it's pro-controlling women
Mhm.
and not necessarily pro-baby, because you don't actually care about the human being.
That's why it's pro-birth. They just want the baby to be born. They don't care about the baby after that
They don't care about the mom.
or the mom. It's just pro-birth.
Right. And
Just like pro-choice is not pro-abortion,
right. It's
but they are pro-birth.
pro-choosing.
Yes.
Like that you have the right to choose. If you truly, for religious reasons or otherwise, believe pro-life, you think that's the right thing to do, then by having a choice, you get to exercise that.
Yes. Like whenever I get pregnant, I will have my child
Right.
because that is my choice
Right.
to have my child.
Right.
Yep.
And
It doesn't mean I'm pro-life. It means I'm pro-choice and my choice is to have a baby.
right. And I do not think it is selfish for deciding that it's not best to bring a child into this world because you're not in the right place financially, emotionally, whatever the case may be.
Yep.
And if that means that you do give birth and you adopt, that's okay. I
Right.
understand I'm not saying that if you don't want to have a baby, you should automatically abort it.
Well, yeah, but that's also pro-choice.
Right.
Because it was your choice to put them up for adoption.
Right. But it's more so the people who are forcing the situation, and then that child ends up in an unsafe environment.
Forgotten about once they're born.
Right, because of that.
Mm-hmm.
That's more so what I'm like, if you're not seeing what the problem is with that and your stance on things, then you are the problem.
Yeah.
And you really need to look into how forcing that on people is affecting the children.
Mm-hmm.
And so live your life how you want to live your life, but don't live your life by telling other people how to live theirs.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I think that's a good place where we should step off of the soapbox, because we could go on for really long about this.
I could live on a fucking soapbox at this point. Especially these days, man. I just carry it around with me.
You just, whenever you need to pop it down.
Yep.
Hop on up.
Used to be, I could leave it at home and only need it once in a while. But now I gotta take that shit everywhere.
You could even put it on layaway, but like not anymore.
I gotta take that shit everywhere. So.
Well, awful case.
Yeah.
You covered it well.
Thank you.
But I hated the content of it.
When we have cases like this that we talk about that are heavy and difficult and really sad.
But sometimes they need to be talked about.
I try to turn it into more of a learning opportunity so that.
Because again, we want to bring, like what we like to say is we want to bring attention to these lesser known cases. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure people in Hawaii know of this case, but I didn't.
Right.
And so I think, and a lot of times podcasts will try to avoid topics that involve harmed kids, which I totally get.
Absolutely.
But also at the same time, it needs to be discussed. It needs to be brought up and people need to see it.
It needs to be an opportunity to learn.
Yes.
And an opportunity for people to grow their empathy.
Yeah.
And hear about real life stories, not just people saying the system is messed up.
Yes.
How is the system messed up? Well, let me tell you the story.
An example. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Well, nice job covering it.
Thank you. Hopefully someone learned something from this and we're not just talking to people who already agree with us.
I mean, we have the same views, but I learned more things.
That's true. That's true. I will say I did learn a lot too. So, yeah. Well, stay scary.
Stay safe.
Super safe.
Yeah.